Okay, another great example of the media's malfeasance on these topics. So my friend Allie Stuckey, okay, Allie's great. She's over at CRTV, which is a great outlet. You should check it out. And Allie she does these sort of parodic videos. How do I know she does parodic videos? Because I did one with her. Okay, just a few weeks ago. It was actually at a Turning Point USA event. She was there to cover it, and we went in a room with her cameraman, and she did basically a rip-off of Between Two Ferns. She sat across from me, and she asked me absurd questions, and I sort of laughed awkwardly at the absurdity of the questions. This is Allie's shtick, right? She generates an awful lot of satire content. So she took an interview. We showed you, and you listened to, portions of this same interview with Alexandria Ocasio Cortez. Okay, we actually played this interview on the air. It was with Margaret Hoover on PBS. It's the same interview in which Alexandria Ocasio Cortez suggested that she didn't know anything about foreign policy, and she obviously didn't know anything about capitalism or economics, and she looked like an idiot. So what Allie did is she cobbled together a video of her questioning Alexandria Ocasio Cortez, and it was very funny. And it was obviously not real. And the reason you know it's not real is because the background for Alexandria Ocasio Cortez is not even remotely the same as the background in the video for Allie Stuckey. It is obvious that that Cortez is not sitting down with Allie Stuckey. You can also tell because in some of the cutaway shots, you can see Margaret Hoover's dress, which is green. And then when they cut away to Allie Stuckey, she's wearing a blue dress. It's completely a different dress. Okay, here is what it sounded like. And then I'll tell you how the media reacted to this because it's completely insane.
How do you respond to the people who say that socialism has never worked?
Capitalism was the most efficient and best economy, perhaps.
Abject poverty is at the lowest level it's ever been because of capitalism.
Well, I think the numbers that you just talked about is part of the problem.
I don't understand. So what do you hope to accomplish when you're in Congress?
This is a really good question.
So what is it?
I just think that that's the wrong question.
Okay. So why should voters vote for you?
You vote. It's democratic.
Okay, and obviously it is Allie mocking the hell out of Alexandria Ocasio Cortez, which is fine. You know how I know it's fine? Because the left does this exact same tactic all the time. For instance, last week, Stephen Colbert. Right, we'll get to Stephen Colbert in just a second because I'm going to show you how the left uses this exact same tactic, and then I'll give you the punchline, exactly how the left treated this Allie Stuckey video because it's totally insane. Okay, so Allie Stuckey cuts this video with Alexandria Ocasio Cortez, and as I say, this parodic video in which she sits across from the radical socialist, self-described democratic socialist Alexandria Ocasio Cortez goes viral. It's like 1 million hits on Facebook. And there's nothing unusual about this tactic, right? It's a frequent comedic tactic. How do I know this? Because Stephen Colbert did it last week with President Trump. So President Trump did an interview with Bret Baier, except Stephen Colbert has significantly better graphic artists than Allie does. Allie basically just cut back and forth one camera shots of her face and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's face. Here, the producers over at Stephen Colbert's show are actually able to essentially superimpose Stephen Colbert over Bret Baier in this particular interview. Or with Sean Hannity, rather, in this particular interview. Here's Colbert interviewing President Trump using exactly the same tactic as Allie Stuckey used with Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez.
Mr. President, right off the bat, I gotta say, wow, what a summit. You managed to bring both sides of the aisle together to agree that you historically sucked. How do you think your buddy Vlad came off?
I thought that President Putin was very, very strong.
What else can you tell us about the man?
President Putin is very much into
undermining our democratic process, having the U.S. over a barrel. Don't tell me, I'll get this. Playing you like a fiddle. Wait, what am I doing? Why don't I just go to the source?
Okay, and then he actually just trots over and he sits down with Vladimir Putin, right? So this is a frequent tactic that is used by folks on the left. I'm old enough to remember when you had Conan O'Brien doing a routine where somebody would play Bill Clinton's lips, right, where there would actually be like a still photo and then just Bill Clinton's mouth would move and it would be as though he was interviewing Bill Clinton. All of this is normal comedy, right? This sort of stuff happens all the time. But how does the left respond to basic satire? Which, by the way, is much funnier than what Stephen Colbert did there. That is utterly unfunny. How do they respond? Well, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, she tweets this. She tweets, Republicans are so scared of me that they're faking videos and presenting them as real on Facebook because they can't deal with reality anymore. Here's one bona fide truth. Election day is November 6th. No one is faking the video. I mean, honestly, perhaps we ought to look into a governmental program of forced redistribution of senses of humor so she ends up with one. Because this is crazy. Okay, it is obviously a satire video. Again, Allie makes satire all the time. But what the left really can't deal with, okay, the real truth they can't deal with is that some people on the right actually have a sense of humor. The left wants to paint the right as completely humorless. This is one of their favorite things to do. What the right really is we're all John Lithgow in Footloose. We sit around telling the kids not to dance. That's our thing. But if we're ever funny at all, then it turns out that it's because we're racist, sexist, bigot, homophobes, or because we're faking it. So you could forgive Alexandria Ocasio Cortez for having no sense of humor about herself. You know, as somebody who is parodied on a pretty frequent basis, I can tell you, I find most of the parodies about me pretty funny. But apparently, if you're a hardcore democratic socialist, humor was outlawed by Stalin a century ago, and so we ought to simply pretend that it doesn't exist. The part of it that's hilarious, though, is the way the media treat this stuff. Okay, so how do the media treat this? So a video producer at Vox tweets this out. He tweets out, "Wow, this is Ocasio-Cortez PBS interview with Margaret Hoover spliced together with a CRTV interviewer. Notice they never appear on camera together, and the interviewer shot is lit different, plus higher resolution. Took 1 minute on Google to sort out. Reprehensible." Did it ever occur to this guy that they weren't trying to make it look like an actual interview? That the whole thing is parodic? Like, yes, it's shot with different resolution because it was done on the cheap. Because it's not like Allie is spending tons of money on a Stephen Colbert style implant you in the video talking to President Trump. I love that the people on the left were so exercised over this. I mean, they were really exercised over this. The Washington Post ran a full piece about this. I am not kidding. It's a full piece from the Washington Post about the evils of this. Okay, and they tweeted this out. After a fake interview of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez went viral, its maker said it was satire. Its maker said it was satire? It's obviously satire. It's clearly satire. I understand we live in an era where people are not allowed to make jokes or have a sense of humor, but you have to be out of your mind. You have to be so unbelievably stupid to think that this was meant as an actual legit interview that it amounts to dishonesty. Eli Rosenberg writes the piece. He says, the video traveled quickly after being shared Monday on Facebook, gathering more than 1.5 million views in less than a day. In it, Alexandria Ocasio Cortez, the congressional candidate from New York whose Democratic Socialist campaign has struck a lightning bolt into the world of Democratic politics, appeared to give bizarre answers in a 2.5-minute video that was staged as an interview with conservative commentator Allie Stuckey on the site CRTV. Ocasio-Cortez shook her head no when Stuckey asked if she had any knowledge about how the political system worked and seemed to imply that Venezuela was in the Middle East and was a model of socialism. But the video did not depict a real interview despite its caption. Allie grills, okay, and the grills is in scare quotes. It's in scare quotes. It's obviously satire. Congressional hopeful and progressive it girl Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Instead, it used heavily edited footage. After an outcry, the Facebook page for Stuckey's show was updated to note that the video was satire and included a reference to the original PBS show. But the fact the video traveled so widely has served as another example of how misleading information continues to thrive in the fast-paced flow of information online, despite Facebook's promise to better weed it out. So now the Washington Post is calling for regulation of Facebook because people cannot recognize a satire video. And then you wonder why when President Trump says, "Why are you listening to the media?" so many people on the right nod along go, "Yeah, that's right." You know when I saw this video, this Allie Stuckey video for the first time? It says a couple of nights ago when it first went up, and my father was online. He said, "Look at this hilarious video." Everyone realized that it was funny. Everyone realized it was satire, except the writers at the Washington Post. And then this writer says misinformation is not completely outlawed according to the company's community guidelines, and neither, of course, is satire, but the video appeared to fall into a confusing gap between the two before it was labeled. No. It says, to many skeptical eyes, the video was obviously fishy and staged, but it appeared to be taken seriously after it was shared on some conservative-leaning pages on Facebook. This is reminiscent of when, I believe it was the Washington Post, ran a fact check on a Babylon Bee piece on Facebook. The Babylon Bee is like the Onion of the right. It's just incredible. It's just incredible. Again, this is a frequently used tactic on the left, the fake interview. It's a very funny bit. Right? For example, I'm old enough to remember when late-night comedians did Bush versus Bush. Did anybody actually, Jon Stewart did this. Did he actually think that George W. Bush was debating George W. Bush? Like, did anyone think this was anything but satire? And here it is from, 10 years ago.
Mr. President, let me just get specific. Why are we in Iraq?
We will be changing the regime of Iraq for the good of the Iraqi people.
Governor, then I'd like to hear your response on that.
If we're an arrogant nation, they'll resent us. I think one way for us to end up being viewed as the ugly American is for us to go around the world saying, we do it this way, so should you.
Okay, so, this is a tactic that's frequently used, and this is the part that drives me up a wall. When you undercut your own credibility on a regular basis, members of the media, it's going to be very difficult for you to fight President Trump when he says that you've destroyed your own credibility.